Hi. So I'm testing the sound. It's been a while since I tried this. Um, Hello. Time for some curl development. Yeah, I just wanted to check the sound since one of my previous episodes I started and talked for 10 minutes before someone told me that the sound wasn't good. So I actually was muted. So hello and happy summer to you. It's been a while since I did this. I noticed that the last episode I recorded, it was the 7.65.0 release, which was in the end of May. Why? Pretty much 1.5 months ago. And now I've moved my camera so it's more from a little angle now. I'm going to try that. So yeah, got my coffee. I have my browser somewhere. It's over here. That's the curl website, and I just started to look at the changelog that we've done since 7.65.0. I released that on May 22nd, and I just wanted to get up to speed first. So we released that, but it turned out that there were more bugs remaining. In particular, I don't remember which one. I think we had some HTTP2 problems in 7.65.0, so there was a crash and something else. So I quite soon decided that we couldn't leave it like that and do a regular release cycle. We needed to fix that problem. So we worked pretty hard on a patch release that we released 2 weeks after 7.65.1. And well, quite a bunch of bug fixes in that one as well. But even after that one, there was still bugs sort of being there and annoying. So after having tried 7.65.1 for a while, I decided that we shouldn't merge any new features, but instead work on making sure that we fix bugs during the entire release cycle. You know, the entire 8-week thing we do in curl. So we spent the entire cycle fixing bugs, and we did quite a lot of them. As you can see, this list is extensive. Not all of them are serious or important, but there's still a whole bunch of them. In particular, again, HTTP2 problems we had. So when we had this, it started to look really good, and then I released 7.62 on July 17. That's like 2 weeks ago, right? But of course I had messed that up. Well, not of course, but that's what I do sometimes, and especially when we don't have test cases for the problems I mess up. Well, of course, that's the reason why I didn't notice it. I landed a patch. Where is it? Somewhere in here. That made that it actually makes it possible to build curl without the progress meter. That's the patch. It adds a -- disable progress meter to the configure script. You can basically rebuild your curl without the internal progress meter code. You know, the one that says how long time it's taken, the speed and stuff like that. It's just a way to decrease footprint, make the output smaller. And when I did that, I broke it, so it actually, even when you built with progress meter, it actually never shows up. Which is interesting, that we have no test case at all that verifies that the progress meter actually shows up. It's a little bit complicated to do since it's so timing sensitive and based on a lot of things. So there's still no test for it. I should go back and think about how to do a test for it. But anyway, no test for it. So I released that on July 17th, and immediately someone posted a bug report, of course, 4122 saying, hey, there's no progress meter. So I, and of course, a curl without a progress meter, it seemed like a pretty serious bug. I mean, the curl tool. So we did a follow-up release 7.65.3 on July 19. Just as you can see, 2 days between. Totally annoying, but now this is the latest release, and things have come down. I could mention some of the other bug fixes I've done since then, but first Jim's question about if it speeds up anything in any internals. No, unfortunately not really. This just disables the output, the text thing you see in the terminal when if you do like this. Let me show you. Right, if you run curl, you run curl localhost blah 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 80 gigabytes and you save it to a file, you get this progress meter output, and that's the thing that is removed if you build it with disabled progress meter. Only the progress meter, because a lot of these values, the speeds and times and everything, they still need to be calculated and evaluated because they're used in other places in the code, and you can extract it afterwards with this variable thing, so you can still time connect, however you do like this, time connect, stuff like that. So all these still need to be calculated, so you don't actually disable that much code, unfortunately. So there's really no speed up here. All of those things still need to be calculated. That said, I don't think you actually notice those calculations anyway. There's a bunch of them, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think you can actually feel or sense the time or it takes to do that. So those were some of my mistakes a while ago, and yes, it felt pretty painful to do not one, not two, but 3 patch releases on 7.65. So yeah, once then we did 7.65.3 fixing the progress meter, then it felt good to finally do that and finally have a pretty good release, but we were still not in a really good place, I think, because we had at least a few annoying bugs remaining. And in particular, I'll show you this one. So here's the changelog done for the releases, and you can always go to this pending release notes, boom, on the /dev release notes URL, and here's the the current release notes, the changes that are pending for the next release. And the next release is going to be 7.66.0 because we're adding changes now. So it warrants a bump on the minor number. But okay, I just wanted to highlight them. First, I wanted to highlight the parallel transfers support. I know that I did my first parallel transfers on the live stream, so in a previous episode you can actually see me developing that and trying that out for the first time, and I think it works pretty good. I don't think users are still exercising this to a very large extent, so I'm sure we haven't found the bugs here yet. So I'm convinced that once we ship this and people start trying out parallel transfers for real, there will be more fun bugs to smooth out. Yeah, since also when I did this parallel support, I had to remodel the code in the curl tool a bit, quite a bit actually. It was quite a pretty big patch. I think it was somewhere around 2K lines changed. So therefore I also modified regular serial transfers because I had to, separate it up a little bit when I handled URLs. So I need to transfer them either serially or in parallel. So I had to, the previous code didn't really allow that, but now it has to do that. But then I had to change the serial transfer thing as well. So I'm pretty sure I also made some new fun side effect that serial transfers might have changed in some subtle ways too. But I mean, all the test cases that are using curl, I didn't have to change that many. I had to change some of them because of some minor behavior changes, but those are more like undocumented things on how we handle the protocol parts. I don't think we've promised to work like we did before, as long as the command line tool works the same way, and it does. So I'm pretty happy with how things turn out there, but you should really get the dev version and try out parallel transfers. It's pretty fun too. But what I was you're right, and then I also and we can get to that in a minute, but I also merged my initial code for doing HTTP3. I'll skip that for now. But when I did 7.65.3, I still had a very annoying HTTP2 bug outstanding, and that's this one. That's the bug 4043. Yeah, I can click on it. I don't think it's not a good read like this live anyway. It's 4043. Parallel HTTP requests can occasionally result in timeouts, and as you said, it's close. I've fixed it. I fixed it when I got back from my vacation period here, pretty much last week, I think. This week. Closed it 3 days ago. So yeah, this week, early this week. So it turned out yeah, you can do exactly like that. Well, with commas. If you do, if you want to do curl, you can do curl, and usually you then, if you want to do output it somewhere. If you want to do put, you can do. But if you want to do put, you can do like this. You can, if you want to put the README file to both localhost, example.com, like that. So you and that should work. And I'd rather use quotes than to avoid the shell from trying it out. And then it'll send then it'll do put to both of these. First put to the localhost one, and then to the example.com one. So you can do these braces things. Oh, haha, thanks. So sorry again. Dash capital T for here, over here on the side here. So dash capital T to do put, and then I can use braces and just do whatever part of the URL, comma, and it'll do the same thing on all of these. So yeah, you can do, if you want to put the same file to different hosts like that, or you can or even like this. We can even like this. If we want to put to both the number 1 and the number 2 CGI on both of those host names, we can do that as well, and then it'll just iterate through them. Well, of course, we don't actually have anything that makes sense. So this then will make 4 puts actually. Someone asked me on Stack Overflow just this morning why data is documented to do a post while people are using it for put as well. But of course, the data or -d, that's the same option. It will make a post by default, right? If you do like this, it'll post just this text, and we can post it to two sites like this, and it'll do that. And if we can also then, if we want to change this to actually do a put sending that content, we can actually change it with -X. But then it's got some other issues. Why didn't that work? Let's ignore that for now. Anyway, -X, that's used to change the method curl would otherwise use. It's as if you know me, you know that I'm getting annoyed that people are constantly adding that in vain or without it being necessary. So you like this, if you want to post hello to localhost, adding post is really not advised. In this case, it doesn't actually change anything, but if you add a follow location, it will change curl's behavior, and people will be upset because curl then doesn't do what they expect it to do. Well, you can just remove the -X and it'll work exactly the way you think. Yeah, right. You can't really. I'm not sure why I'm not in the middle of it. Should I move it some there maybe? I don't know. Right, you can't really round robin the host names in this manner. So since you have to list them like this, if you do like this, they will be done in that order. It's an interesting feature to make it do them in a random order, but no, I don't think it's. And it's very easy. If you would rather have them in another order, you can just write a little script and generate this new for every time or whatever. It's not that complicated. I don't think we need to add many more weirdo things. And I could add that the braces, how come we can use a brace like this, and you can use brackets within the URL like this. And I did this, or we did this originally back in the, I don't remember exactly when we did this, but I know that curl has supported braces and brackets like this since very early on, probably still in the 90s. Well, we did it with that because braces and brackets are not actually allowed letters in URIs, back as they are defined in RFC 3986. So you can't actually write a valid URL using braces and brackets. So they were sort of left outside of this. Exactly. So if you do that, if you do this, they will do. It should do 4 parallel transfers, so they will all be done at the same time. Well, attempted to be done at the same time. Then wrong curl. Bam. So yeah. I was going to say, so back then we could sort of we could steal these letters and use them in the URL, and it wouldn't actually break anything because they were never used in URIs as they were back then. So we thought it was really clever, or maybe I did, or maybe I was just stupid. But then of course, fast forward into current how things are done today. Now browsers are actually considering them to be legal within URLs. So now you can actually, if you go to your browser and you will find URLs using that, like, well, maybe not localhost, but you can find URLs using brackets or whatever like this, because they are now, over time, they have suddenly become legal in the URL for browsers. So while they're allowed for browsers like this, curl by default will consider it to be a globbing thing here. But you can turn it off with curl with -G, and then it won't do any globbing, so then it'll treat it as part of the URL anyway. Right there, so you can see that then it'll send a get for those brackets to the server. Not that my server has anything there, so it'll send back a 404. But I'm just showing you, because if you don't use -G, it'll instead just it did it. Oh right, it might yeah, okay, because it's not a proper glob, so it skipped it then. So but if you do like this, 1 to 2, it'll do a range. It'll do 2 gets, the 1 and the 2. But if you do -G, it'll use the exact URL or request that document. Oh, that's just a side note. URL syntax, that's a fun chapter in life. I have tried to not go on and rant so much about URL syntax lately, but it's still a mess. Okay, so that's I fixed that HTTP2 thing in master just the other day, and Mr. Tom, who filed that bug 4043, he then subsequently told me that he could now do several million requests per minute over HTTP2 without problems, which I think is pretty good. I mean, it's good to finally have those annoying HTTP2 problems fixed. So now I think we're actually becoming pretty good at handling, and all of those were problems pretty much where we did multiple streams over the same connection. And in this last annoying case, this 4043, it turned out to be that if we had multiple streams over the same connection and one of the streams ended, it got 5 bytes of data and then it ends. In HTTP2, you get a bit that basically says end of stream, so you could get data and end of stream at the same time. But internally in curl, we're handling data pretty much like we do with sockets. So we have to read a 0 to be sure that the stream has ended. So instead we just got the 5 bytes, and we didn't really realize that the stream had ended. So we got all the data, and it would just sit there and then time out eventually if you had a timeout. Otherwise it would just hang there. And now we instead make sure that we read the 5 bytes, and we make sure that we read an extra time immediately after, and then we will get the 0 and realize the stream is closed and be done with the transfer. So with 7.65.3, with that fix, we're now doing HTTP2 really good, finally, at last, or again, whatever. Another fun thing, I'm pretty much saying a lot of things that I'm going to talk about when I do this 7.66 release. Another fun thing I think we did, or we got done in Git master is this one, 4157, which is also a bit subtle if you don't know how curl works internally. But when you use the multi API with curl, you set up a transfer, and then you ask curl for sockets to wait for, and if something happens, you ask curl to perform whatever it should perform on the sockets that something happened on, and then you go back and wait for the socket, and then if something happens, you tell curl to act on it and then go back. So you just wait for sockets that curl tells you about. And when curl by default has a threaded name resolver, so it means that it will resolve host names in the background. which has up until now, it means that while curl is resolving a hostname, there's no socket to wait for. And that has always been a little problem in curl. Not for curl, but for applications to handle that situation properly. You set up a transfer and you ask for sockets to wait for and then act on it when something happens. But in a short period of time in the beginning, then there's no socket to wait for, and there's no real timeout because we don't have anything to wait for and we don't know how long to wait. So it's been complicated. The advice in the documentation has been to, if this happens, just wait a short while and try again. Basically, you have to loop for a while until it's done or it's failed, and then you realize that and you go on. But now Amit here in this pull request made a socket pair. This only works on Linux, by the way, or I shouldn't say Linux, it's actually Unix, if you have socket pair support, which is not Windows. So a Mac, Linux, other Unixes, everything that is sensible has socket pair. So now it doesn't really, it's not in a limbo now. It doesn't have no sockets. It actually have, well, it's not a socket. Well, it is a socket. It's a file descriptor. So now it sets up a file descriptor for the threaded resolver. So now we have a socket to wait for even during name resolving. So the socket, we set up a socket pair, the new thread is just resolving, and once it's done, it writes to the socket pair. It's just a pipe in memory, so that applications now have a socket to wait for even during threaded name resolves, which takes away that it takes away that moment in time when there's nothing to wait for, and that's good because that nothing to wait for is difficult and has been misunderstood forever. Welcome from Twitter. Yeah, so I wanted to mention, so this little thing fixed a problem that there's no socket to wait for a short moment of time, and this will make applications behave better on the systems where we can do this. So there's no socket pair on Windows. So I'm secretly hoping that someone who knows Windows and writes stuff on Windows will come up with a suitable approach for Windows too, so that we can do a similar thing on Windows. I'm sure that it'll be much harder because on Windows it's not really, sockets and file descriptors are not sort of native concepts for the Windows. So well, I don't know enough to do this myself or to know about it much, other than that this is the Windows version of the threaded resolver now still have that still has the short period of time without file descriptor to wait on or socket. And I have a little thing. I have a fun pull request that is highly related. I want to introduce a new API call to libcurl called curl multipoll. I'm not married or convinced the name is the most suitable one, but I couldn't come up with a better. Naming is really hard. So there's this function already, curl multiwait. It exists. It has existed for a while. I don't actually remember when we added it. It wasn't added from the beginning. It's been there for years at least. But the curl multiwait function has a real impact in that it when there's nothing for curl to wait on, it returns immediately. If there's no socket to wait on, it'll return immediately, and that's difficult because then we sort of push that decision to the application. Oh, nothing to wait on, it return immediately. And usually a lot of applications will just busy loop there, which is highly ineffective and stupid. Or they will just say, I sleep 100 milliseconds, and then it'll get it'll get bad performance instead, because 100 milliseconds might be far too slow if you're like resolving a local hostname or whatever. 100 milliseconds is rarely as long as it takes to resolve a hostname or set up things. So I'm introducing curl multi-pull that is almost exactly like curl multi-wait, but offers a way to, if curl has nothing to wait for during that annoying name lookup phase, it'll do the little sleep, very short sleep if necessary, by itself. Actually, it struck me now that there's another moment in time where there might be no file descriptors to wait on, and that is if you ask curl to cap download speeds. So you never download faster than 100k per second. Then if curl actually downloads more than 100k per second, it'll sleep for a while, or it'll not read from a socket for a while, and during that period of time curl will remove the socket from the sockets set for the application to wait for, and then it can actually end up not having a socket to wait for as well, until a few milliseconds or whatever has passed, and it can put it back again and read again from the socket to make sure that it won't read faster than you've said that is the maximum speed to allow. That is just how we need to do it to be able to set a maximum transfer speed. I'm trying to keep up with the IRC chat as well. It's a multitasking challenge. Okay, so I felt that it was a suitable day to do a little curl stream today, because I finally, it's the middle of the summer here in Sweden. I've had my vacations. I'm working full time, but the house is usually full of my family and kids and stuff. So it's not, it's never really a good moment to stream, but now nobody is at home and it was a good time. But I don't have any major particular bugs to bite into, debugging HP2 problems or seg faults or anything. So right now I'm looking at the issues here. There are 26 issues filed. If we go by them from the most recent ones, there's a link error on Mac OS that is being handled, I think, because I think it's not really a bug in curl. There's a TLS handshake hang with this particular server, but that I also don't think is a curl problem, but it's a server problem. There's a crash with SMTP on a really old curl version that I don't think is around anymore, so I asked for more data. There's a problem with automatic, and look at that, a crash report just arrived. Reload. Okay. I don't think that is valid. Okay. Okay, let's take that then. Fresh from the GitHub. From a version we haven't released. But that's good. I'm developing a mobile app called Guru Maps. We use curl to download offline maps on user devices. After a recent update of curl, I see following crashes with 1 out of 200 chance to catch. This is I think I'm looking at the crash trace dump or stack trace here. So this is I recognize the crash, or I recognize the stack trace. It is I'm pretty sure. Let me head over to my little Emacs. Just the release notes that I'm working on. I could also update the release notes. Yeah, iOS, but we have a huge amount of iOS users. Actually, I think iOS is among the biggest operating systems. I mean, the biggest user of curl. When we ask users on the, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm talking at the same time. When we ask users every year in our annual curl survey, it ends up on like over 10% of the users who answer the question use it on iOS. So a big platform for curl. Now wait a minute, curl resolve. This is sorry. I think I confused myself. I don't recognize the crash. I mixed it up with another previous crash. So okay. It uses CARES. It says. Where am I? I'm back at reading the bug report. Maybe I could zoom it a little bit. So it uses CARES, which I'm not sure it matters here in this crash report. So this is the general name resolving function within curl. So this FetchHundra is yeah, that's the function that checks or it extracts a name from the internal DNS cache. It either succeeds or it fails depending on if the name is in the cache or not. So that we always store name results for a while. You know, we resolve a host name, we keep it in the cache for 30 seconds by 60 seconds by default, and we can only you know, we don't know the TTL for host names, so we don't know how long to store them in the cache properly. So we just keep them in the cache for 60 seconds and hope that it'll be okay. And really, it is. But in this case, this looks like, oh well, if we ask for, you know, get it from the cache and it makes a hash delete, it seems like we got an old entry and we want to delete it to make room for the new one. And it looks like that crashes. So it's a crash in the DNS cache related stuff, which seems interesting. I mean, interesting in that that is code that hasn't been changed in a long time that I can recall. So why would we have a problem with that now? So here's the FetchHundra function. Yeah, let me just mark it as a crash and the name lookup related. I'm back in my browser here. I labeled it yeah, I need to ask what was okay, really weird. Well, these are really difficult problems anyway. So he gets a crash there 1 in 200 times, and then we have code that basically hasn't changed. Here's the function. All right, when I do -s, you can't really see the age. So it's not been changed for a long time. Why? Now, I'm not going to. I don't think this is that alarming right now, at least, because I suspect either this. Well, I need more details. I need a way to. And in my case, my typical regular build uses CARES, and it's the same CARES version that he's using. I'm not running on iOS, but it's still the same version. So in my regular debugging version, it's the same setup. My next question is going to be, can we reproduce this somehow? But if they say it happens 1 in 200, yeah. So yes, my next question is certainly going to be, can you please tell us how we can reproduce it? Because if he just shows us a stack trace that happens 1 in 200 for him or on his device, it's not going to. I'm not going to be able to chase that down based on that alone. So no, we don't have. We don't have a CI build for iOS. I can't run or build or test anything on iOS. So yeah, it's a. But then there's quite a lot of platforms that we never run CIs on, and that we never debug on, and we never test on. So it's actually not as bad as it sounds, because most of curl is generic code, right? It's portable, so most of the code runs the same thing on all platforms. So mostly it doesn't matter that we don't test natively on iOS. iOS in particular is very, very close to Mac OS for a lot of things, even for TLS and stuff. So it's rarely a problem that we don't test and run natively on iOS. But sometimes, like in this case, if it happens to be very specific for iOS, it could have been fun to be able to do it. But then it's not a winning concept by me trying to chase every random platform people are having problems on, trying to do things on their platforms. It's much better if people that are having problems put in the extra effort to actually write up a sample program similar to those and try it on another platform that is easier to debug on and easier to play with, like Linux or whatever. Yeah, so it wasn't that version, it was 7.65.3, but it's still the latest. Does it matter a lot which build flags they have? I don't think it should, but I mean, sure. On a platform that I can't build and test on, I don't even know how they build and run it on iOS typically. So it's a little bit of a weak spot in my skill set how people are doing this on iOS. I know they're using curl a lot on iOS, but I don't know a lot about how they use curl on iOS. Exactly. Difficurly. That's difficult. It's very, very difficult. So yeah, that was a live bug report, but I'm not sure I can do a lot of about that right now. Let's see. What if it gets back with some more details? The thing is, again, that's a crash in the hash code. Hash element destructor. So it removes a hash element, and this is a callback. I think. No, right. It calls a callback at least. So, but the hash code is used, in many places in curl, and since it's used in many places in curl, it's used all the time, and even the DNS cache is used all the time, and we have more than 2 users of curl, I believe. So this is code that is exercised a lot by a lot of users on a lot of platforms, on a lot of devices, everywhere all the time. Right? It's a crazy amount of users using this code, and this crashes 1 of 200. It smells user error, but I can't tell for sure. Pull requests. So we have a bunch of pull requests. I have my multi-poll. I've asked on the mailing list for feedback. I've asked on I don't think I did on Twitter. Yeah, maybe I did. And I've asked in the PR as well, but it's a very subtle change. It's a very minor new function. So I'm not expecting a lot of feedback or comments or anything. So I'm planning to land this in master in a week. Just give ample time for everyone to respond if anyone wants to. Otherwise, I'll land it and cross my fingers and say this is a better API than the previous one. And they're very confusingly named because poll will wait more and the wait will wait less. Otherwise, they're very similar. I just couldn't bear to call it wait 2 because that would be even more annoying, I think. So that's the process. Yeah, there's an ESNI pull request here, and it's marked WIP work in progress since it's actually not there. It's more of a foundation, or this guy is Niall O'Reilly. He's more of a feeling out the territory, and I think much tidying up remains to be done, as he says. So June 4, right, he forced push 9 days ago. I haven't checked it out, I think, since he did this. But anyway, yeah, so ESNI support is pending. That is fun. And I'm not sure, should I explain what ESNI is? Or everyone knows what ESNI is, because why not? So that'll be fun. It's going to be curious how he makes the DNS interface thing, because you need to extract data from DNS to get the keys for ESNI, and that is interesting. If you don't build with CARES support or using DOE, I believe Firefox still requires DOE to be used for it to actually do ESNI, and I understand. I mean, the reason, of course, is because of that. You need to extract data from DNS, and yeah, you need an API for that, and library calls and stuff. And doing it without CARES or without DOE, you have to do it some other ways, and then you need an API for that, and that's not portable, and it's not existing everywhere, and yada yada. Still fun. I want to see ESNI support come. So other pull requests we have pending, a lot of them. Here's a fun one. This guy is adding, the W-W option in curl. So when you write, we have a lot of variables that you can extract data from. I showed you a little bit. You write like this, curl -W, and you can, get a lot of variables that you can extract information from after the fact, after the transfer is done. Here's a list of variables. You can extract the content type that was used, the effective file name that was used on the command line for that transfer, the entry path that for FTP or HTTP response code, the connect response code, HTTP version that was used, the local IP address that was used for the connection, the local port number, blah blah blah, how many connections, how many redirects, and a lot of that. A bunch of them. It's actually a pretty cool sub feature in curl. And a lot of people are using these, are appreciating these time stamps. So you can extract a bunch of timestamps from the most recent transfer, so just to know how long time did it actually take to connect to the remote server, TCP connect basically. Well, a lot of those variables, and this guy that I mentioned here, this pull request named 4132, it adds 2 new variables to the W support, and the 2 values are, or the 2 variables, one of the variable is the returned content from the transfer, and the other one is the error message. Basically, you can then do curl W content like that, and if you would do it like this, so this would get the you probably would throw away the normal output. So you could throw away the normal output, and then it'll save it in the content variable, and then you could use -W to output everything, and it would output the content as a variable. You can then actually output it multiple times. Yeah, that's sort of where I'm going to. You can, it's possibly my suspicion. I'm sort of letting the guy work on this because it's I haven't understood it completely, and the person, I don't want to sound rude or anything, but he has had a very hard time to explain what he wants and what he's doing. So I'm still thinking that I haven't quite understood exactly what he's doing, so I haven't really shot down the idea. I'm saying maybe it could be useful. I think he wants to do it to output JSON here, But I think he will end up in a situation where he wants to escape this content as well, because so what if it comes in a weird way and he wants to output JSON here, you know, however you do a JSON string, blah blah blah, and something else in blah blah here, and you want it to be JSON compatible because that's what you're getting from this API yada here. So, but it took me like 25 questions and back and forth until I even understood this is actually what the guy was doing or attempting to do, because he was also doing this by introducing, I think, 3 new API calls to libcurl, and yeah, it was it's been a long road. There are now 38 comments on that pull request, and the code isn't close to actually doing this, so I'm still feeling out the territory. It might just end up nothing. Why do you want the content in a variable? Yeah, and what if that content is super huge, you know, gigabytes or whatever? Now it feels like asking for trouble in some way. I don't know. Maybe I'm not as clever as I want to be, so I haven't understood the genius of this. And then we have another thing. We have quite a lot of them, but many of them are not fully cooked. I have another. This is coming closer. Providing an API to set number of max concurrent streams for HTTP2 and potentially HTTP3. So yeah, that's getting close. Just some minor details. I think that could. I mean, that's a really narrow thing, but it seems like an API we want to offer. I have this one pending. I've also asked for feedback on the mailing list and on in here, and lukewarm response. I'm thinking of putting this on some sort of back burner somewhere, put it in a storage facility and save it for later. This is another very subtle thing. I want to offer a way. I think I mentioned this before. It's back from April, so it's an old one. I want to offer a way for users that set curl opt custom request. When you set curl opt custom request, that is the same thing as using the capital X option with the curl tool. You know, you can override the HTTP method used in the request. But if you override that, it also overrides it when we follow redirects. And usually the HTTP response code tells you how to do with the method on a redirect. So if you set this, you often break the redirect logic in curl. And it's surprising, and people don't really expect that, even if it's documented, but still. So this PR adds a way to make it not do this surprising behavior, but still it's another bit that people would use to make it behave the way you thought it behaved originally but didn't. So I've asked about it. This is one way to do it. Nobody has really said it'll save their problems or make their lives better, so I'll keep it around for a while and see what I can do. It says 200 lines added, but I think that's mostly because it's a pretty big mon page for the option to describe it. The code parts aren't really that big. Just I think it's like 10 lines of code that are changed and so. But okay, now I don't have any particular bugs to work on. If you have a huge bug problem question, then fire it up. I'm going to do like this. I'm going to dive into some fun HTTP3 work, just because why not? Unfortunately, I can't. Yeah, so it can't reproduce the case either. So yeah, I'm going to dive into HTTP 3. I'm going to go and get a coffee refill first. Hey Mable, it's time for HTTP 3 development, right? I have verified that curl still builds with the quiche HTTP 3 library. Okay, I'll get back to the HTTP 3 one. I'll just run off for a minute or two and get a coffee refill and then also it gives me this excellent opportunity to show you my coffee break screen. Back in a bit. Okay, so if you are in Barcelona on Full Stack Fest in September, I'm going to do another presentation about HTTP 3, which I've of course done a lot of times by now. And if you want to see one, you can see a whole bunch of my HTTP 3 talks on my YouTube channel. So HTTP 3 HTTP 3 has been scheduled to be done several times by now, and the charter I think still says that it should be done last month, I think. So I think it still says it's now past the date it was said to be done, but it isn't, of course. And they're still working on it, and recently there's been a lot of discussion on how to do priorities with HTTP 3, because well, priorities from HTTP 2, the original plan was to just make priorities in HTTP 3 the same way we did it in HTTP 2, but then there's been this huge ongoing discussion for a long time about HTTP2 priorities being complicated and not implemented properly by servers, and well, a complicated area, and a complicated system, maybe over-engineered. That wasn't really. We could do it better. Blah blah blah. So when we do it for HTTP3, should we just blindly get what we'd used with HTTP2, even though we're not that happy with HTTP2, the HTTP2 version, or should we redo it? And should we do the simpler one? And if we do a simpler one, how should we do it? And on and on and on. So, and I think right now, the line of thinking is now basically just don't do it at all, and even throw it out for HTTP2, and I mean do it in another way that might actually work better. So that's the ongoing in the HTTP3 camp. Then HTTP3 is a protocol on top of QUIC, and the QUIC layer itself is not done either. That's even being discussed, details in that back and forth still. So it's not only HTTP3 that is sort of on a shaky ground. So neither QUIC nor HTTP3 are close to be done yet. It won't happen this year, you can be sure. Even though I think it originally said it should have been done last year. But it's complicated and a lot of things, so I don't think it's a big deal that it takes a little extra time. So I'm going to do a lot of presentations by HTTP3 this fall, really. So even if you're not in Barcelona in September, you can see me like in Copenhagen in November and in Stockholm in November. I'm actually not going to talk about HTTP3 more than 3 times this fall. Do we really need priorities? Yeah, that's a good question. That's also one of the debates. Right now, then I think the HTTP3 route is going to say there won't be any priorities in the sort of base protocol, but work on it and sort of clamp it on afterwards. But the general discussion has always been that if you do a multiplexed protocol, you need priorities. Because how else would otherwise you would end up just getting it in the order you get them, and that's not the way you want it. But also there's so many opinions and data and everything, so I can't say within a certainty. I'm not convinced myself either way. It seems that logically it makes sense that you would need priorities. If you have a lot of data to send, in which order would you send them? Without priorities, you would just send them round robin or first come first serve, but that might not be the best way, right? If you want to show a web page with hundreds of objects and you have 100 streams, surely it would be a good idea to offer the server some clues which one is most important, and the server would send them in a prioritized order. And vice versa, and also sort of update the priority. What if you're a browser and you want to show 1,000 images on the screen, but you can only see 20, and you move around the scroll bar, right? Now I want to see that image and not the other one. So yeah, I think priorities make sense. The question is rather, do we need them to be that complicated, or the other end, how simplified can we make them to still make them useful? So it's a difficult subject, really, and there have been a lot of research done on HTTP2 priorities, and how do the browsers send priorities, how do the servers implement priorities, and how does it actually work in practice. So yeah, So yes, and I know, I think I can talk about it, but I implemented HTTP2 priority support in curl for Netflix, so they certainly wanted HTTP2 priority for their HTTP2 backend when they do, the GUI stuff for Netflix embedded devices. So sometimes these discussions about what to do with things in HTTP of course get a little bit too browser centric, possibly because the browser people are all the big guys, the big development team, so they have a lot of people to throw on these questions, and but there are of course sometimes other users that might still also appreciate and can take advantage of features like priorities. But to get back, I just wanted to mention then that right. So if you scroll, if you have a lot of images and you scroll, maybe it's a clever idea to down prioritize the images that you can't show anymore and up prioritize the ones that you can show. I think in general that sounds like a clever idea, right? But in in many cases, and in particular in particular in our Western-centric developer case, our requests are very short and brief. They're over in a blimp of a time anyway. You don't need to reprioritize a request that is already ended. So if you just have very, very, very short bursts of requests, they don't need to be reprioritized because they already ended. So reprioritizing sort of implies that they are ongoing for a while. And maybe if you have a web page with 1,000 images, are they really ongoing for a long time when you're downloading them? Sure, for some, and in some cases, yes, and then it makes sense, but in a lot of cases, no, and then prioritize and reprioritizing just never happens anyway. Yeah, well, sure, all my talks and everything I do is pretty much available for free, so you can, if you go here, if you go to my talks page, or actually if you go to my front page and you go to my talks tab, daniel.hacks.se talks, and in the bottom here you can see videos of previous presentations, and there you can see it's not all my talks because for some reason I haven't added all the latest ones, but you can also go to my YouTube channel somehow. If you go to my front page and you click on the YouTube thing down here somewhere, don't I have it? There's no YouTube link there. Okay. There should be, but okay then. If you go to YouTube and you search for me, then there you will find HTTP3 talks of various lengths, because I've done them several times in different surroundings. I did a 30-minute in Germany recently, and I've done a little over an hour ago, a little bit over an hour at Klarna. That was just some month ago. That is fairly up to date. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with the priorities. I think the common, I don't think it's a consensus yet or an agreement, but it seems that people are basically saying get rid of all the priorities from the base protocol HTTP2 and HTTP3. Don't send any priorities, and work it out how it should be done, and then send priorities as just regular HTTP headers, so that we can basically send them however we decide afterwards. We don't need to make frames, special frames for them. Then you can't really reprioritize if you have them as HTTP headers, but I don't know. Oh, that was just a long way to say that HTTP 3 is not done yet. And I could then say that I worked on HTTP 3 as a separate branch for a good time here. HTTP 3 using Quick, so I started working on it before it was HTTP 3 actually. So then right, what did we do with the yeah, I think we deprecate the global DNS cache is deprecated. Yes, it's actually more than deprecated. It's not being it's not being used. So if you try to set it, it just won't happen anything. Oh, look at that. I have to remember to look at this. I'm supposed to remove. I'm supposed to change the default switch for HTTP 0.9 support in the September release. Good to remember. Okay, so I merged the current HTTP 3 and Quick support. It works like this. There's actually a documentation, a separate page called http3.md, and this documents how how you enable HTTP 3 support in curl right now. It's experimental, it doesn't work, but you can enable it, and I have a shortcut to do that called quiche. So I build it with the quiche HTTP 3 library, or a quick library too. It's done by people at Cloudflare. And Cloudflare also have a HTTP 3 server for testing up and running. So if we just enable HTTP 3 support with the quiche library, and here we can build with either quiche or ngTCP2. So why would you go with one or why would you go with the other? That's a good question. And since none of them works in curl yet, so you can pretty much go with either one because it won't make you happy anyway. So it's just a different set of work ahead of us. So I'm going with the quiche one right now because I think it's less work for me to get some sort of progress. It has an easier API because it's assuming that we can use boring SSL, which we can't long term, but I can short term. So HTTP 3 support enabled with quiche. So I wonder, I could just do this right and switch to my quiche directory and update that and just make, yeah, it's been updated a bit. So let's rebuild it. It's a Rust library. So there. And we rebuild curl with quiche support. I'm not supposed to use just -j when I live stream because it'll make the video jumpy. Oh, now. I had some previous build options set that would override the C flags stuff in surprising ways. I get these warnings because I build with boring SSL instead of OpenSSL, and they have modified the API. So it shows warnings. One of these days, someone will fix that. No, wasn't that good enough? Did I forget some? So dev HTTP3 it mentions quiche. I don't think I can get the version number out of quiche yet. So we have quiche. I'm going to go to a little secret web page that I have here and figure out the test server URL. So, where am I? So this is the test server URL. So I should be able to do this. HTTP3 direct, and I will potentially change this before we make this not experimental anymore. But this tells curl to use the given host name and port number as HTTP3 directly. You know, otherwise this is then using quick immediately without trying to figure out if it's actually quick or HTTP2 or something else. In a real world, it will probably in a real world this will figure it out. Bootstrap HTTP3 via the alt SVC header. I have support for that too, but I haven't really combined the alt SVC header and the HTTP3 support yet, so it doesn't really work right now, and I'm not sure if this server even speaks alt service. So this should, if things would work fine and we would have HTTP3 support in the world, this would show a test page. Bam. But it doesn't, right? Because it doesn't work. It says failed. It says connected to the server on the port, which I suppose is fine. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is true or a lie. Oops. Pressed some stupid button. But I should go to lib, and there's a vquick director now for all the different quick backends. Well, there are two. So, and here's the support. Here's the code that is dedicated and for the quiche library. I'm just going to see what it. Connected. I wonder what is quick is connected. Yeah, I think this. So I'm going to set a breakpoint in that function. Something found. Let's see if I get those. No, I don't get those. Dude, I did. These are no symbols. I don't like that. Why do I get those? I have this C flags, all LD flags, and none of them. Jesus, what? Okay, I'm switching to another shell here. another color too. So okay. Alright, maybe it saves some of that when I run configure, right? So I need to rerun configure. I think so. I'll just make a so I rebuild configure script and I rerun my quiche enabling configure script command line. So just regenerate everything. Make sure that it enables it to be 3 at the end of this. So since quiche uses boring SSL, this is not really a winning library in the long term, since rarely any users, I mean not Linux distros and Mac OS and Windows and everything who want to use boring in their curl versions. So I need to, long term we need another library for that allows use of other TLS libraries than boring. But OpenSSL is behind on quick support, so maybe quiche will be updated to support OpenSSL once OpenSSL is fine, or maybe at that time we can switch over to the ngTCP2 library, which can support any. It's supposed to be TLS library independent, or it is. But then I need to write a lot of TLS adaptments myself, which I haven't really done. So that makes it harder to use the ngTCP2 library. So okay. I think it worked now because I reran configure. But it won't make this work because I still didn't fix any code. But now I hope that I can set a breakpoint in this function. I could not. I wonder if that's just because no executable file specified. I tend to like switching off shared library builds when I debug, because it makes it more convenient when I want to debug with the debugger, since the debugger then figures out symbols immediately without having to load the library afterwards. It'll just load it together with the curl tool. So I'm disabling shared. Disable shared makes it build only the static version of the curl library. So when it'll get a all right, I didn't change anything. Shared, no. Static, yes. There it is. Still didn't work. Okay. So this is the big state machine in curl, so it returns from curl multi-perform here and do nothing here and then blah blah blah. There, into the state machine again. Protocol connecting. What is the state at this point? It said proto connect. Boom. HTTPS connecting. Oh wait, again. Okay, why did we call it again? Boom. First time. Process ingress. Flush egress. Is it established? No, it's not established. That's why we called it again. Okay. So it's not actually connected here. It's actually started to connect there. I think these parentheses are interesting. I wonder what they're supposed to say. I'll ignore that for now. Quiche con is established. I'm going to read up on that, so let's go here. It's time to Google me some info. Oops. Wrong. It does like this sometimes. It'll just get me another the wrong browser window. That's the browser window I want. That's I suspect it's an OBS Studio bug. So here I am. That's the QuicheCon is established. Okay, I hoped I would get some documentation page, but I didn't. So let's go to GitHub, Cloudflare, Quiche, docs, functions, con is nothing. Oh, con dot, because this is established. Handshake completed. Send some data on stream 0. It's okay. Is established. Not a lot of information there. So the first time it'll say succeed through both, but it isn't established. And the next time we go into the process ingress function, we do receive we get data, just that okay, what does it mean? The process, it's the yeah, we get data here. And there, -10. Feels like an error code. Like perhaps TLS fail. And then of course it makes you question, so if TLS fails, could that be... Okay, let's go over to the boring SSL Git tree, and that's and we're rebuilding boring SSL just to be sure that we're actually up to date with everything. I don't build it in parallel now, so it's a little bit slow, just a single core build of boring SSL. I wonder if I can enable more verbosity. The Quiche HTTP3 module. Yeah, boring SSL only has CMake. But I hear the CMake guys say it's really good. Don't go there. So let's see if I need to rebuild Quiche after that. I don't think so. And then rebuild curl after that. But this, I'm pretty sure, won't make a difference. Boom. Nope. But I wanna... I wonder if how to proceed with this. I know several guys working on in the Quiche team. I don't know if any one of you are here listening to this, but I mean, it looks like maybe this isn't my problem. This looks like a Quiche problem, but then it makes me curious. Do I actually communicate with the correct endpoint they have several different endpoints for different versions, but this fails so early, so it seems like it should just work. It's this fails already in the quick part. So I would imagine that the different endpoints they have are more different HTTP support. They have an endpoint for HTTP 0.9 and another endpoint for HTTP 3. And yes, I work remotely. I've been working remotely for a long time by now. Actually, I'm on my 6th year working 100% from home. It's awesome. I never want to work anywhere else, but so I guess I've gotten a bit spoiled. or maybe just scared of other people. I don't know. No, but it's I like it. I think you should be happy that I stream now and not what I didn't do before. It's actually pretty hard to stream, and actually streaming is not sometimes it's hard to actually be productive while talking about it and make it interesting for someone else to see, just not me scratching my head thinking about weird problems and adding print lines everywhere. So it took me a long time to just try it out, and the reason I'm not doing more streams than I do is that I tend to I want to have more firm issues to work on when I stream, and not just move around and wander to do things, just randomly pick random things. So like this, I'm feeling that I'm drifting around right now, for example. I don't think this makes the best stream. But still, this is me here now. So I'm trying out different things. So okay, Quiche says TLS handshake failed. Why does it do that? It doesn't really help me. So I will go here and see issues. Why is the connection boxed by default? Okay, some rusty thing. Send a trade for connection, blah blah blah. Should I file an issue in curl or should I file it on Quiche? Decisions. I'll file it on Quiche. Okay, here we go. Here's the again. I hate it. That's hate it when it sort of. It seems that I'm having my browser, this browser on my left screen, and I'm doing a lot of other things on my right screen. And sometimes I have two browser windows on my left screen. And sometimes when I select and browse things on the Firefox window that isn't visible in the stream, OBS picks that one instead of this one. So it's like it picks the wrong Firefox at times, Firefox window. And I actually right now have 4 different Firefox windows open on my desktop. It's pretty annoying because I think it's potentially could reveal some sensitive things that I have in the other window, but I know you're all good people, so why would you exploit sensitive things that I show on my okay. It's a quiche problem, right? Sure, it's a quiche problem. So let me do this. In the quiche code, quiche if it's not, if it's right, if it's here. Quiche says like that. I'll just verify that it actually will tell us -10 if I do this. Quiche says, and it doesn't need a new line. Quiche con receive says equals. Maybe I should make it sound more professional so that Alessandro will fix my problems for me faster. Alessandro Ghidini is the main guy behind the quiche library at Cloudflare. He's also a curl contributor since a long time. Okay. So when I build curl with the current quiche code, and I'm going to just going to be very explicit about what I'm doing, because this is the first bug report on quiche with curl quiche. When I build curl with the current quiche code, get master blop with configure blop with configure the curl tree using curl get master and run on Debian 64-bit Debian Linux and run it like this. And I will copy my command line, which will show, boom. It will show the Cloudflare server. It ends up getting time return and -10 is the name from the function. Happen how to diagnose and get further. Can I get more debug info or logging somehow to better understand the details of the wrong endpoint for my test. Well, I'm doing good. It would have been funner if my code worked better, but you know, sometimes my rest of my world, like friends and family, wonder what I do all days when I say that I basically debug code all the time. So debugging is my life, right? I enjoy debugging, and this is debugging and debugging. If it wasn't this bug, it would have been some other bug. But I think things are good. My coffee is no more. And I'm not sure exactly how much longer I'm going to stream, because now I ran into this problem. So I'm going to first file this bug. When I build curl with the current cache code, quick matplotlib with configured in the curl tree using master, and run it like this, it ends up getting -10. So let's submit it. Boom. Okay, I submitted a issue for them. Okay. This, I think, I better switch again back to my this little thing. I added a little failf code for the quiche, and I think I'm going to actually just adding some failf codes here to aid the debugging when working with quiche. Unexpectedly returned. Like that. And I'm going to make this into a little pull request, just a tiny one to get more debug logging. And I'm going to add that pull request, and then I'm going to switch to trying out an GTCP2 build. That could be fun, because I'm sure they changed the API since the one I've used. So it could be a matter of cleaning things up a little bit. So let's check out a branch, create a branch called quiche failf. The failf function is just a convenience function internal that just stores an error message for a failure. That is what it is logged in the debug log, and then you can extract it from the error buffer thing with the libcurl API. So I'll just do this. Quiche add failf calls for 2 error cases to aid debugging. So push that, switch to this. Compare and pull. I wonder if I have HTTP3 related. Boom. Okay, I can either work on a GTCP2 support, or I can see if I can get working on a CI build with quiche. I can't actually do any test cases, but I could verify that it can build with quiche. I wonder if that is a better use of my time right now. Let's dive into NGTCP2 first. NGTCP2, and they have probably changed a lot since the last time. NGTCP2 readme. Bum bum bum. All right, there's an NG-HTTP3 library now that they're to build sources on them. So yeah. Yeah, so he has an OpenSSL patch thing. That I also need to, because it has an older version, Git draft 17, but it has now one for Git draft 20. It's a lot of work here, so okay. For Linux. So Tatsuhiro and the team there in NGTCP2, they have a patched version of OpenSSL. Right, but now I'm remembering things. I have OpenSSL and there it is, TCP2. My config. So I'm creating a little script here just so that I'm to build. I'm going to put it in my generic prefix. Whenever I build and install custom libraries, I put them in my home directory, in this directory called build blah 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 blah. So I'm just adjusting my scripts here for that. My config. That's my config. It's okay. And once I've run the config, I should run make, and I'm limiting the -j. Maybe it makes a nice video on the stream, and then I'm going to install it like that. So there's a Slack for the Quick community, basically, and in the Quick community they have in that Slack there's a channel for basically every Quick implementer teams that I know of, and that are every team that is participating in that effort. So I can actually go to and talk to them on that Slack if I need to. But my curl work isn't strictly Quick or HTTP3 related, right? It's more like curl using these libraries. So I first want to make sure that I'm doing things right. So and here's, let's clone ngTCP3. I haven't done that before. This is fun. So here's ngHTTP3. And here's another configure, and this is what I tend to do with my configure lines. I do an echo and I generate a my configure just to be able to rerun it again later at will. So I just edit my configure and I'll make it one of these build directories like that, so I can run my configure in that directory. Boom, it builds with that prefix. I can run a check, but I won't, so I'll just run make install instead. Oh, should maybe build it first and then make install. Installed in there, and clone. This, what I'm on the right side you can see here, is the readme from the ngTCP2 library. So I'm basically getting a build done for ngTCP2. Git checkout draft 20. Draft 20 is not the latest. I think they are on 22 now. That's sort of the revision of the Quick protocol. So where am I? For Mac users, blah blah blah, and here's the configure line for ngTCP2. Then, so I'll just verify, see what it does. That's the OpenSSL thing. Oh, and it wants the path to the NGHP3 library as well. So I'll adjust that. And we'll see. Yeah, I'm adding a hard-coded path to the custom OpenSSL so that I can build this version of curl with blah blah blah. When I link everything, it'll use this OpenSSL build, which is the patched one from the NGTCP2 team. Prefix. Yep. Let's see if that works. Worked that far. That looks right. I'm looking at the OpenSSL thing, the libng-http3 thing. Okay, so if I build this, will it work? Well, will it build first? Okay, errors, but warnings rather, errors. Okay, there. They are just examples. I think we can ignore them. So make install. Don't need to install the examples. But I find it annoying that the examples don't build. Okie dokie. Okay then, so let's take a look at the NGTCP2. There it is. Issues, they have 28 issues. Okay, let's dive in. Let's see if we can fix these examples. I'm not a fan of him using C++ in the examples because it makes it more complicated for me to borrow code from the example. Okay, so maybe is it that I'm using the wrong branch of the NGTCP and I think I'm going to do it like this. NG 3. Bah. I'll figure this out myself. I'm going to make a little stop in my stream now because I think I wandered enough into weirdo HP3 library matters. I'm going to try to figure this out on my own, go and get some food, and I'll get back and try to stream something next week. And if you have any sort of issues or anything if you want to ask me anything or deal with on the stream or fix in curl or anything like that, feel free to ask me. You know where. I'm going to, of course, this will be on YouTube later. But now I'm off. See you later. Bye.